Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Inside Illustrator. Here we talk about what are we doing at Illustrator and things that might be of interest to all of you folks outside Illustrator. So let's go. So today's topic is DataOps team at Illustrator. Now, why DataOps team? Because DataOps is becoming critical for every organization which handles biomedical data. This is fueled by huge data generation, huge data generation by various organizations, and simultaneously the rise of technologies which can curate at scale. Now, both of these yin and yang things are fueling and basically driving the importance of data ops. Data ops is not only important in the context of technology, but also team communication and coordination. It's very important, and data ops will actually decide whether an R&D program succeeds or not in this age of explosive data growth. So it's very organizations. It's very important for organizations to focus on data ops and get that right. So why data ops now? What is the reason it has become so important? So the first reason is large scale, high throughput data generation. The number of new data sets that are being added in public domain every year is very impressive. Data is being generated across many omics types, as you can see in the figure here. And because of this, many people are able to do a lot of things which were not possible before. Many researchers and pharmaceutical companies are still not making their data public. Even then, public omics data continues to increase at a breakneck speed. Advancements in technologies and reduction in the cost of sequencing have enabled institutes such as Broad to be more ambitious and generate omics data in quantities never seen before. Typically in petabytes, they do that. So at Elucidata, we follow the framework of Ideate. Let me show you what that means. So basically, it's a framework for ingestion, discover, enrich and analyze, and basically communicate. It's a very important framework that we devised in order to deal with this large variety of things that we see in biomedical data. So data ops primarily consist of ingest, but there is also discover and other components to it. But most importantly, data ops is primarily very important for ingesting the data, right? So keeping on this particular framework, we'll talk about that how this we have this data infra for ingestion and other things. Another aspect that is driving data ops in biomedical data is the rise of AI and tech, which can curate data at a scale. Availability of cloud and commoditization of AI models is accelerating and making data ops possible. This helps organizations in discovering data and also analyze data at scales. Many times it comes from public sources, but they do have their in-house data as well, which is as important to move to cloud and verify it so that it is findable by all the data curators as well as all the participants in the whole data ecosystem. Organizations are very quickly realizing this, and they are moving almost all of data to the cloud. That's kind of a second wave after data generation. The third wave will be about curation of data. And the third wave is also happening, but it's what we see right now, that the second stage is pretty quick. Then basically in the third wave, they will start curating the data at a scale, as benefits are simply too much. Any scientist around the world in an organization can access data by someone else around the world in an organization and get insights on that. That was not possible before. People used to carry hard drives earlier to basically communicate. Okay, so let's talk about data ops at Illustrator. So last year we ingested and curated around 1.4 million data sets, and that was largely driven by tech and in-house developed models. Now, what is that tech, and what do we mean by the models here. I'll show you briefly. So basically, this is a structure that we developed in-house and kind of a data infrastructure. There are three very important key parts of this infrastructure. One is basically the connectors themselves. And what do these connectors do is basically they get the data from these different repositories and basically validate the data, convert them into specific formats and unified formats, and basically curate them using NLP models and sometimes also image-based models as well. We create a structured flat file, and that flat file gets stored into a storage. Now, the second part of this whole thing is data infra. Now, the data infra basically converts all of these flat files into binary format files which are queryable, and so that basically we are able to provide APIs out of these curated data, and and people are able to query these on a very granular level, on a molecular level. So this is the data infra, and the data infra consists of Elasticsearch, data tables, DynamoDB. That's the tech or the stack that we use, and that's basically the consumption part, which actually uses all of this. One of the very important part of this is, and there is a third part, important part of this is the curation model, curation infra. And the curation infra basically uses manual curation as well as expert generated data to basically make these BERT models, which are able to use natural language cues to curate the incoming data automatically. So that's the overall picture of the DataOps that at Illustrator. And in all of these cases, there are multiple checkpoints which are human in the loop checkpoints, where humans actually are involved in moving this pipeline forward. That's maybe 10% of the times, but that's still there. And a large part of this is basically taking feedback from customers, internal customers as well as external customers, and basically take feedback on consumption and quality of data and make changes to the data accordingly. The team consists of engineers, data engineers, bioinformatics scientists, bioinformatics engineers, ML engineers, researchers, curators, program and product managers. So it's a multidisciplinary team which drives this process forward. So that's the DataOps at Elucidata. So one of the questions that people ask while comparing DataOps and DevOps is like, is DataOps simply an extension of DevOps in biomedical domain or in other domains? The answer to that is like categorically no. Even in other domains such as finance, DevOps is very different than DataOps. In the biomedical domain, you have an added complexity of multiple personas and data types which are complicated in itself. The nature of DataOps is very cross-functional. Apart from individual skills required for engineering, understanding data, curating it, the team also needs to have an overview of things. Only then we can effectively meet customers' requirements or product requirements. We have 30 different data types currently on Poly. Each of these has to be ingested in a unified format to enable queries. Having such diverse data sets in the same format and on the same platform makes queries quite powerful. A scientist with no knowledge of metabolomics can integrate transcriptomics and metabolomics to derive insights. In order to bring down such barriers, we ourselves have to overcome those. It's more like be the change you want to see, right? The bridges between the teams are really important. I'll just show what the team looks like. What does it mean to be a DataOps team? So yeah, there are different components like data curation, very similar to what we saw in the DataOps, that there are like 3 different components to it: data curation team, data addition team, data engineering team, and they have to like talk to each other, understand each other's requirements, For example, data addition team will give feedback for curation, and data curation team has to convert those curation requirements to curation APIs. And data engineering team will basically be providing connectors which will ingest the data. So the bridges between these teams are really important, and it's not a one person job. And by bridges I mean like actually humans which can actually understand both parts of the system, like NLP as well as data addition, or connectors as well as nitty-gritty of biological data or biomedical data. It's they are very important, and they don't work in silo, in the sense like I'm not talking about one person, but the whole team as a team has to do that job, and those bridges is what basically keeps this together. I'm not saying in DevOps you don't have that, but here the very survival of the DataOps team depends on this. Several folks will have to play that part, and the human part is basically what makes DataOps very different than DevOps. So what's next for DataOps at Elucidata? I mean, as true for other things, the more we develop, the more we learn about problems. At each of the three components described earlier, we have identified several opportunities to improve, and there are several problems to solve. At Curation Infra, we are trying out weak supervision, self-supervised learning, and active learning to reduce our dependence on manual curation. We are trying to program training data itself. At the connector layer, we are increasing our number of connectors to include proprietary as well as diverse data types. At the end of the year, we are aiming to maintain more than 50 connectors, making our largest curated biomedical data repository more and more lively, in the sense the data velocity will increase. At the data infra level, we are trying to innovate to reduce query time and enabling querying on all kinds of data. So that's what we are doing, and feel free to reach out if you want to know more on any of the things. Thanks for listening.